The very first words of Jesus recorded in the Bible appear in Luke chapter 2, when at the age of 12 Jesus accompanied his family on their annual visit to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover. Picking up the story in Luke chapter 2, verse 43, as they were returning, after spending the full number of days required, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents were unaware of it. Instead, they thought that he was somewhere in the caravan, and they went a day's journey. And then they began looking for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem looking for him. Then after 3 days they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When Joseph and Mary saw him, they were bewildered. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us this way? Behold, your father and I have been anxiously looking for you." And he said to them, "Why is it that you were looking for me? Did you not know that I had to be in my father's house?" Yet they, on their part, did not understand the statement which he had made to them. Apparently it was not only his parents who had difficulty understanding the statement which Jesus spoke. Translators who have attempted to render this statement in English have had the same difficulty. The 1611 King James Version of the Bible translates this verse, "How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business?" 1946, the Revised Standard Version, rendered it, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" 1960, the New American Standard Bible, "Did you not know that I had to be in my Father's house?" But then qualifies that translation with this footnote, "or affairs or business," literally, "in the things of my Father." 1973, the New International Version, says, "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" The 2011 edition of the NIV, editors added a footnote explaining the phrase may be also translated, "about my Father's business." In 2001, the English Standard Version rendered it, "And he said to them, Why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" With this footnote, "or about my Father's business." So what's the problem? Is it Father's house, or Father's business, or both? And does it really matter? Well, in the big picture, not one single article of faith and doctrine hinges on this verse. But as one who serves in deaf ministry, I'm charged with the responsibility of signing the Word of God both clearly and accurately. So it behooves me to ask the question, what does the text actually say? Well, let's take a look. We go to BibleHub.com/interlinear. Click on the Greek interlinear chapters. Select the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2. And we scroll down to verse 49. And here it is. Verse 49. Reading from the English translation that is offered. "And he said to them, Why is it that you were seeking me? Knew you not that?" And twice in the something, the word in brackets here offered by the editors of this interlinear suggest the word house. "Tu patros mu," of my Father. It is necessary, or it behooves me, to be. When we see here in this English translation a word that is enclosed in brackets, that is the editor's alert that a word we need to complete the sentence in English is not present in the Greek text. Normally it's a word or thought that would be easily understood by the readers, but is necessary for us to state explicitly in English translation in order to make grammatical sense in our language. In this case, the word house does not appear anywhere in Luke's text, but presumably would be understood by his readers. Before we dig into that assumption, let's look up the word that we do have in the lexicon, and that's this word tois. We see the part of speech is a definite article, and it means the, as opposed to an indefinite article, which we would translate a or an. Now, if you notice the spelling of the word that we saw in our text and the spelling of the words that we see here in the lexicon are different, please understand that in the Greek language, the way words are spelled changes a lot depending on how they are used in a sentence. This is a chart that shows all the different forms of this one word that we translate to English as the. It's one of the many charts that students of the Greek language must memorize. Notice that this word meaning the stands alone. The actual word for house that we see offered in the translation is not actually in the text, just the word tois, the. In the Greek language, when a definite article, the word we translate as the, appears by itself without the noun that it's supposed to specify, we're stuck asking the question, the what? The word here, the, itself acts as a reference to an unstated noun, as if the reader or hearer should know what that noun is. The one, the person, the place, the thing, the whatever. Since Mary and Joseph were concerned about where Jesus was, his location, Jesus answered that concern, telling them the location they should expect to find him, in the temple. So the thought process goes in rendering this translation, I must be in my Father's house. But there is a glaring problem with this assumption, which we find down here below in the coded letters. I want you to look at the last word there, plural. In the Greek language, if the article the stands alone and it's singular, then the noun it's standing for is also singular. The thing, the place, the one, he, she, or it. But if the substantive article is plural, then the noun that it's standing in for is also plural. The things, the ones, they or them. So if Jesus were referring to his Father's house, the temple, then the definite article in this sentence would be singular. But it's not. It's plural. It's not one thing, one place. It's multiple things. This sentence, translated literally, is, do you not know that I must be in my Father's things, or I must be in my Father's affairs, as the New American Standard Bible correctly footnoted. Now, the grammar information that's offered here has a bunch more that relates to this discussion, but to go there I would have to wade even deeper into the weeds, and I will spare you that tedium. Out of curiosity, I checked Martin Luther's 1545 German translation of the Gospel of Luke to see how he understood this verse. Here's how he rendered it. Wisset ihr nicht, dass ich sein muss, in dem das meines Vaters ist? Don't you know that I must be into that which my Father is? I like that. That's good. Jerome's Latin translation of this verse is even closer to the vocabulary and structure of the Greek text. Didn't you know that in these, which are of my Father, I must be? There is, however, one authority that causes me to consider that in my Father's house may be indeed a plausible way to to understand that Greek phrase, entois tou patros mou. I'm referring to the folks who lived closest to the time, place, and culture in which the Gospels were written, namely the 2nd and 3rd century translators of the New Testament into the Aramaic dialect spoken in the vicinity of Antioch in northern Syria, where the Greek and Aramaic languages intersected and both were still very much alive. The Syriac translators understood Jesus' words to mean, I must be in my Father's house. Now, before I hit the stop button, I want to show you where you can study how other students of the text in our time have struggled with this passage and how they have resolved it. To do that, we go back to the Bible Hub homepage, click on the Gospel of Luke, wait for it to refresh, select chapter 2 and verse 49. And when the verse comes up, click on the link that says comment, or it's to the commentary section for this verse. Over here in the right column, excerpts from several commentaries discuss this verse and how it ought to be translated. Most of them, but not all, favor translating it, in my Father's house. They argue that even though it's not what Jesus said, it's what he intended to say. After all, they point out, the answer that Jesus gave didn't really answer Mary's concern. Well, all through Jesus' ministry, that was his pattern. Often people asked him direct questions, and just as often he responded with an answer to the question they didn't ask. But in Mary's case, Jesus actually did answer her question. Look again here at verse 48. Notice that Mary did not ask, "Where have you been?" She asked, "Child, why have you done this to us?" And Jesus answered that question. He said, "I must be in the things that pertain to my Father, and so must we."